Okay. So I think I'm recording now. All right, so today we're going to try to solve this equation right here. And we're going to use that in 3 different methods using the product rule, the quotient rule, and the chain rule, which I have explained up here in case you aren't familiar. All right, so I'm going to try to do this in 3 steps. To do this, we have 3 different functions right here. To use any of these rules, we have to break it into 2 functions. So I'm going to break it into 2 functions here. This is not a good drawing tool. Anyways, this and this. This is going to be f of x. This is going to be g of x. So, step 1. We got to try to break this up a little bit because, as you can see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 functions here in g of x. We can only elaborate 2 at a time, like I said. So we're going to have to try to break this side up using a chain rule, this side up using a chain rule, and then combine them using a product rule, which we have up here again, chain rule, product rule. This little section we'll have to use a quotient rule for. So we got a lot going on here. I'm going to try to make this simpler. So we'll start out with just the left side. See if I can add a text box. We're going to do just cosine x to the 3rd divided by x to the 5th. Sorry about my slow typing. Never learned correctly. Okay, so to do this, we got 2 functions here. I'm going to call this a of x. Call this b of x. Text box going again. So a of x equals cosine of x. As you can see, this whole intersection is x. That's how we know we're going to be using a chain rule to find its derivative, because it's a function inside a function. So that was the easy part. For a prime of x, find the derivative of cosine of x is just sine of x. Pretty simple. Now we get to the harder side. For b, over here, we got to use the quotient rule, which is defined up here on top in the middle. So the quotient rule, well, first of all, we got b of x equals x to the 3rd divided by x to the 5th. So we're going to call, it's going to get messy here with all these different letters. We're going to call this one c of x. We're going to call this one d of x. So for our quotient rule, where we have f of x, we're going to add c of x. Where we have g of x, we're going to add d of x. Just kind of swap those 2 out. So that would mean the derivative b of x, which is denoted b prime of x, would be, remember, instead of f of x, we're going to use c of x. So we got to find the derivative of c of x, which, using the power rule, is just 3x. 3x squared, my bad. Take the 3, times it by the 1 that's in front of the x, and then do n minus 1 for the thing it's to the power of. So in total it'd be 3x squared. So that's f of x. G of x is just x to the 5th. We got minus g prime of x. G prime of x, using the power rule again, just be 5x to the 4th times f of x. F of x, which is actually c of x, would just be x to the 3rd. All right, now we gotta take all this, divide it by gx to the 2nd, which g of x again is d of x down here. So x to the 5th to the 2nd, which we can just put that as x to the 7th. Simplify it and make it a little bit easier. Okay, so now we have a of x, a prime of x, b of x, and b prime of x. So we can use our chain rule to finally get this first half of the final derivative. Using that, we got the chain rule up here. We're going to substitute a for g and b for f. So we're going to come over here, right there, and do, well, we can even sum it up and be like a of b of x prime, meaning the derivative, equals, okay, so we got a prime of x is sine, so sine f of x, which is b of x, would be x to the 3rd divided by x to the 5th. And then we got times f prime of x. So f prime of x, which is actually b prime of x, is this whole thing down here. I'm just going to copy and paste it, see if I can do that. Still learning the basics of all this Zoom stuff. It's looking like I can't copy and paste it, so bear with me. Not sure where this came from. What we got here? Okay, there we're good. To the 4th, x to the 3rd, by x to the 7th. Okay, so all of this, here we can actually sum this up too and call this, I don't know, L of x this whole thing right here that we just did. And then might as well denote everything else. Call this m of x. So this would be L prime of x. Just find the derivative of that. Good stuff. So we're getting there. We got one, we got to find two more derivatives, and then we can put the whole thing together. Three more derivatives. Derivative of this, derivative of that, and then product rule to finish this out. So I'm going to save this page, and then I'm going to start a new page. Well, I'm not start a new page, but let me erase all this stuff. We'll keep that L of x there, since we already found it. Okay, step 2, we got to find m of x. Well, m prime of x. So m of x is sine e to the x divided by x to the second. So that's m of x. It's going to be pretty similar to what we just did. We'll give these more names because I'm sure we're all loving that. This x of x here, the sine of x. And then the inner function, we'll call that z of x. Okay, back to the text box. So x of x equals sine of x. Of x, which the derivative of sine of x is negative cosine of x, so we got those two. That was pretty easy. Now we got to go back over here and do another quotient rule. So this time for the quotient rule, oh yeah, we got to give these guys more names. So this one and this one. Call this, I don't know, p of x. Call this q of x, because why not? Run out of alphabet letters. Okay, so q of x equals e to the x, which makes p prime of x using the exponent rule just e of x again, because it'd be e of x times ln of x. Ln of x is just 1, so we don't need that. Okay, so q of x equals x to the squared. Q prime of x using the power rule again is just 2x. As we saw earlier with the last one. It'll technically be 2x to the first power, but that would just make 2x again. So now we can finally use the quotient rule. So we got the derivative of z of x total, which I guess we can put that z prime of x equals quotient rule of, we're going to change f of x to p of x divided by, we're going to change g of x to q of x. Equals. Okay, so P prime is e to the x. We got that times our g of x, which is q of x, so x squared minus g prime of x, which is q prime of x, which is 2x, times f of x, which is our p of x, which is e to the x. Take all that and divide it by our g of x squared. So our g of x is q of x, so we're going to go x squared squared is just x to the fourth, so we're going to skip the middleman and just put that down. Okay, so finally we have our z prime of x. We have our x prime of x, our z prime of x. Now we can use the chain rule again to figure out our m prime of x. Making a text box. So m prime of x equals our chain rule. Okay, we're going to use x and z. So in order to damn it. Okay. We gotta keep that, can't erase half of it. Okay, so we gotta find our x is gonna be our g, and our z is gonna be our f. So we got z x, z, sorry, bear with me. Lost my train of thought for a second. X of z of x. Just confusing, just remember the first x is not the variable. I should probably pick something better. Equals, and then we got x prime is negative cosine to f of x, which is z, the original. So we got e to the x divided by x squared. And we got all of this multiplied by f prime of x, which on f are z, so bear with me again, I gotta do all this crazy stuff. E times x squared minus 2x e to the x by x to the fourth. All right, so now we have m of x. So since we have L of x and m of x, we can combine these two using a product rule. Also, get rid of this stuff. Okay, so our product rule up here, we're going to use, apparently the product rule got cut off a little bit. So we're going to use L of x for f of x and m of x for g of x. Text box. down here. So g prime of x equals, this is going to be long, so really bear with me. I really wish I could just copy and paste, but sadly Zoom is not working that way. So our f prime of x, which we said is going to be our L of x, is all this up here. So we got sine x to the third divided by x to the fifth times 3x to the second times x to the fifth minus 5x to the fourth times x to the third divided by x to the seventh we got all that times our g of x, which is going to be our m of x, which remember is up here. So we got sine x divided by x to the x squared okay, and then we got all of that times plus f of x, which is our L of x. So cosine x to the third divided by x to the fifth times our g prime of x, which would be our m prime of x. So negative cosine to the e to the x divided by x to the squared times e to the x times x squared minus 2x times e to the x divided by x to the fourth. All right, so all that work finally paid off. We got g prime of x. Fantastic, right? Now for the easiest part of the whole time, we gotta find f prime of x. F prime of x is just simply a power rule. So give me a text box going. Right about here, that's all the room I need. F prime of x equals, you wanna know? 10x to the fourth. See how I got that? Multiply the 5 by the 2. Take n minus 1 for the power. So 10x to the fourth. Right here. So now we gotta take these two and combine them using a final power rule. Our power rule up here, we don't have to, or not power, my bad. Sorry. Product rule. I'm also not gonna make you watch me struggle to write that out again. I'm just gonna take it down here like that. So luckily for this one, we don't have to change anything because we already have it in terms of x, or g of x and f of x. So we got that I am going to rearrange this a little bit so I don't have to rewrite this big old thing. I'm going to make it g prime of x times f of x plus f prime of x times g of x, which is the same equation, just in a different way. So instead of doing all this again, I'm just going to take this as f of x times g of x prime equals, all right, so this is going to be our g prime of x. So we're going to take all this, multiply it by our f of x, which, if you remember, is 2x to the fifth right there. 2x to the home stretch, guys, almost there. Plus, all right, now we got to take our f prime of x, which is a whopping 10x to the fourth, and multiply that by our original g of x, which is cosine x to the third divided by x to the fifth times sine e to the x divided by x to the second, and voila. See if I can highlight in this thing. I'm not sure if I can. Anyways, color. That's not a highlighter. That's not a highlighter. Okay. This is a highlighter. Okay, that looks like a highlighter. So all of this right here is our g prime of x. That thing we struggled to find the derivative of for the longest time. Then we got right here, pick a different color, go to yellow. This right here, oh, you can barely see that, but I'm sure you can a little bit. That is our f of x. Cool. That means this part right here is our f prime of x. Which I'm not going to highlight the last one, there's no need, but all of this is our original g of x. So, as you can see, just because the original had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 functions, we can break it up into finding a 2-function derivative, which is what we did. And as far as we've learned so far in class, this is the only way I know to do that. I'm sure there's an easier way, but probably won't learn it this year. Awesome. Thanks for watching my video.